Moving overseas shaped my life in ways I could never have imagined, and my relationship with God got deeper than I ever even knew was possible. When I was in Venezuela and Guatemala, those are the two countries I spent time in. I had the time in New York under my belt. And when I say the time in New York, I had the time with God under my belt. Because before I went and I was in that season of waiting, I remember reading the scripture in Isaiah 40:31. But they that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings like eagles. They shall walk in, they shall run and not get weary. They shall walk and not faint. And I feel like I should have said that slower, right? Like I'm like speeding through that. But when I tell you that season of waiting to get to New York, I just kept saying like, Lord, I want to mount up like wings of eagles. I didn't even know what that looked like. But I just remember like I wanted my waiting to not have been in vain. And when I went to New York and just seeing how God had moved, that really gave me an excitement and a peace about moving overseas the first time. So when I moved, I was like, okay, Lord, I asked you to be with me and make sure I knew it was you with me in New York. I'm asking the same thing. And again, Psalm 91, I will always just ask the Lord to give his angels charge over me. And when I was in New York, you know, I never had an incident on the subway. I never, like, you know, when you think about New York and when you think about a young lady from the Midwest moving to New York, you're terrified. And there was a lot of fear around like my safety and all of these things, and nothing happened to me. Like I literally was safe the entire time. And so I just said, okay, Lord, your track record was 100. Let's keep it there. And so I went to Venezuela. My school director, who I'd interviewed with on the phone, knew it was my first time going abroad alone. Like I had studied abroad in college. I forgot to talk about that. When I was in Arkansas, I had an opportunity to study abroad in Paris and Amsterdam. And that was just so cool. I'm like, I am from the northeast side of Wichita, and I got to go to the Eiffel Tower twice while I was there. Just the coolest experience. And I never thought, it's not that I never thought I would get to do that, because I wanted to do these things. I just never knew how I was going to afford them. And I never knew even how to like book my own flights. And it's weird because I was like, so you just decide to go out of the country and like you don't have to like talk, like you can just decide to do that. And when Jackie and I were in New York and we went overseas, and we literally just went for vacation, and I was like, this is so crazy. Like you can just buy a plane ticket and go wherever you want. And that was mind blowing to me at the time. Like, what? So I'm in Venezuela, and I had a roommate, and we lived in a house, and we shared a car because all of this was provided by our job, which blessing. They bought my flight into the country, and then they had the assistant director meet me at the airport. So I flew to like Miami or something, or I don't remember where we met up at, but like my layover was somewhere on the East Coast, and then we flew into the country together, and that gave me so much peace. But also I was still a little side-eyeing because I was like, but what if she's crazy? And so I had to really give myself to God and be like, Lord, I need you to keep me. Because they're like, okay, and then we'll send someone to pick y'all up from the airport. And I'm like, anything could have happened to me. Like that person picked me up from the airport, could have been anybody, but for God, it was someone from the school, and they drove me to my house, gave me keys, and were like, you get to live in this I think we had a 4-bedroom house, and it probably had 3 bathrooms plus a maid's quarters, or maybe we had like 3 bedrooms and a maid's quarters. I can't remember, but a beautiful time. And when we shared the car, we would take it on certain days. And so I wanted the car on Sundays because I wanted to go to church. And so you guys, I went to church in Venezuela, in a Spanish speaking church, for almost a year. And that is probably why that experience in Venezuela will always just hold such a special place in my heart. The country was going through a lot, and I would show up to church on Sunday, and people would welcome me to their home and ask me to come, eat with them after. And I'm just like, there's barely any food in the grocery stores. Like, how are y'all choosing to invite me over to still feed me? And Venezuela taught me the sovereignty of God. Like, I know I read the Bible and I realized that they were in Israel, but growing up in America and growing up in Kansas, it just kind of felt like people had like taken Jesus and made him just for us. So to go to church and to worship and to hear a sermon and have everyone around me open their Bibles up, and it was in Spanish. It's not an experience I'll ever forget. And it wasn't just like a 1 week thing, right? Like, I wasn't on some short trip and we popped in. Like, I went every week. And so some of the songs they sang were songs that we would sing here in English, and not Hillsong, no shade against Hillsong, but they were like, I grew up in a Pentecostal church where sometimes if we didn't even have someone to play the piano or the drums, like just your feet and your hands were the music. And they had songs like that, but they were just in Spanish. And I was just like, oh, because I was just like, God, you understand this. Like, you hear them and you see them. And it just opened my eyes up to how incredible God is and why I could trust him with the Psalm 91 prayer, because my protection wasn't going to run out the minute that I left the U.S. territory. And so being in Venezuela really taught me that there's nowhere I can go that God won't be there, and that God's not already there doing the work. And I just loved it. And so I had a great time. That year I did not go to school. I just worked. And when I tell you, I was like, finally. Like, it was just, how long was I there? 2 years? A year? However long I was there. I didn't go to school. Like, I didn't study. Like, obviously I worked at a school, so it was still in my DNA. As a teacher, I taught first grade, and I love those kids till this day. Their parents, almost every single parent in that class that I taught in Venezuela has found me on Facebook time and time again, because I'll get a Facebook and then delete it. I'm on here now, I think, for good, but over the past several years, I would get it and just like be like, I don't really need it, and I would delete it. And those parents would find me. They've even gone through my website to be like, hi, Miss Aida, like, I'm so-and-so's mom that you taught in Venezuela, and he was asking about you, or she's asking about you. I love those kids. Venezuela stole my heart, okay? I met two of my closest friends that we're still friends to this day, Samantha and Arlen. Like, we are still in a group chat. This group chat is years long. It goes back so far. And I just have never seen such hospitality. I've never experienced it. And people have been good to me. Like I told you, people have fed me in Arkansas. They fed me, and invited me and came and supported my games. But when I got to Venezuela, I said, y'all don't even have everything we think we would need before we start extending and sharing with other people. And they're like, but what we have is enough, and God's gonna bless it. And there never was a time where I was an inconvenience. Y'all, I got sick, like sicker than sick. I'd actually contracted some bacterial infection. I can't remember the name of it. I was down bad. Had to be taken to the hospital. And you know who went with me? My friend's twin sister came with me and translated, I think, until her mom could get there. And then when we left the hospital, they didn't let me go back home. They took me to their house until I was better. Like, I just feel like that was God showing up in people, like that could have been bad. And I was crying at one point, and they're like, why are you crying? Like, they're like, are you in pain? And I remember just being so scared, and they were like, you're not alone. Like we're because the fear was like, I'm not with my mom, I'm in another country. I couldn't communicate. One, I was in so much pain I could barely talk, but I also couldn't, like, my brain, it was just too much going on for me to translate what I was experiencing in Spanish. And I was like, I don't think I learned these words in high school Spanish class to even explain what I'm experiencing. So, I will always be appreciative of my time in Venezuela. I will always be aware of the hardships Venezolanos are experiencing, and it still goes down as one of the best years of my life. One of the best years of my life. I loved it. So, unfortunately, though, all good things must come to an end. Why is that a saying? Why do all good things have to? I don't think all good things have to come to an end. But our school was going to close because American companies were going to be kicked out, and they had already been kicked out. Like the flight situation, y'all. Maybe later down the line, if you just want a Venezuela video, like what it was like living there, maybe we'll make that one down the line. It was a time, okay? It was a time. So my school director was gonna leave, and she recommended that I also like transfer to another school. And she, I think she offered me, or at least asked if I was interested in going where she was going, but it was really, it was like overseas. And I was like, that's so far. Like, I just remember being like, I don't think I can go that far. And I don't know what country she went to, because she's kind of hopped around now, but I think I was like, I don't even speak that language. So I was like, how am I going to fend for myself? Again, God keeps showing up and providing, and I think about it and I'm grateful, and then I forget it, and then the next situation happens and I think I'm on my own. So I was in that cycle for a long time, but she was gracious and she wrote me a letter of recommendation, and so that's how I ended up at my school in Guatemala. And that just happened to be a very different experience than Venezuela was. Also, another year without going to school, they're like, would you be interested? I'm not, because I'm tired. Because at that point I had 4 degrees and I was always going to work, or I was going to school and going to work and going to school and going to work. And I was like, I just want the freedom. And so Venezuela, I think, also was really fun because when I got off work, I was just off work. Like, I didn't have homework. I didn't have to go to class. I wasn't stressing out about a final or a paper. I just was like, ooh, good time. So Guatemala also gave me that, at least. And I think it was just a different experience because the cultures are just so different. Like, this is a true lesson. Like, yes, both countries speak Spanish, but cultures could not have been like more opposite. So so the provision story in Guatemala, oh my God. I get picked up. So now I'm like a little familiar, same situation. I interview, I decide to accept. They say, okay, we'll buy your flight. And then I was able to pick my flight when I was coming in, but I ended up landing really late. And so they were like, oh, we're going to send the school director to come get you. And it was a guy, it was an older man, and I forget his name now. And then like in the international teaching world, like people will leave, like people move. And so it's not even like I could Google it. Like, I just may never know that man's name again unless I talk to somebody who remembers. But anyways, he comes to pick me up from the airport, and he's really sweet, and he's driving me to where I'm gonna live. And I remember he just was so respectful because it was like y'all, I literally flew in at like 11:30 at night. So it's nighttime. You have to drive me to my residence. And I remember he just stayed in the hallway. And if you get it, you get it. Like, my personal space and boundaries, and me not having to communicate that you've overstepped a boundary, like, I need you to be with it enough to know that, like, that might make someone feel uncomfortable. Let me not do it, instead of waiting for someone to tell you. So I just appreciated that he stood in the hallway, and then he literally was like, well, do you need anything else? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay, well, like, I'll see you tomorrow. Or I think they were going to give us like the day, because everyone kind of landed that day or within those couple days. So I think maybe the next day I was going to get to just sleep all day. And the day after they would take us shopping. Well, he tells me on the way to the apartment that the school had worked out a deal with this housing community. Look at God. And that there were these luxury apartments in Kayala. Oh my God, I'll try to post them like on my Instagram or something. But the most beautiful place. Like literally it was made to look like Italy. And they gave them 3 apartments. So there was a married couple that had just gotten married like 2 weeks before we moved to Guatemala. Then there was a single guy, and then there was me, and I was also single. So he says, well, they gave me this one apartment. I don't remember how many bedrooms, but he gave it to the married couple. And then he was like, and then there was another apartment that was nice. He's like, so I gave it to the single guy. And then he goes, but then they told me that the school, like we could have the model apartment, y'all. The model apartment is where they stage it, where it has all the kitchen supplies and all the furniture and the bed, and like it's staged so you can see yourself in that space for your home. It was a fully stocked apartment. I mean, silverware, cups, plates, pots, pans, tea kettles, knives, furniture. Like it literally had everything. He goes, well, I just kind of felt like I should give it to you, Jesus. Nobody but Jesus. Because what they were going to do the 2 days after we got there was take everyone shopping so you can go buy pots, pans, plates, because it's your place. So like you're going to pay for the stuff that you need. And they had like a basket when I got in there. So usually like toilet paper, hand soap, maybe some bread, and then they'll put like a bottle of water or 2 in your refrigerator, and then like lunch meat. So I get to my apartment, and my refrigerator was already stocked with like stuff. I was like, what? And when I got to Venezuela, very similar thing. Like I think they had just bought like a brand new mattress or new bedroom furniture or something. So when I moved in, no one else had ever slept on that. I appreciated that. And then here God was showing up again, and it's just favor. It's just, I know that this is nothing but the favor of God. And then, so yeah, like we go out shopping, and I don't really need to get anything because mine's already stocked, and I meet several other teachers, and it was cool. It was just different. Like I didn't go to church. I didn't have a car. I think in terms of like walkability from where I lived, it was easy for me to get around where I lived because I lived in essentially like a mall, like an outdoor mall where they had stores on the bottom and then the loft apartments were on the top. So I could do that. Like I could obviously walk around those shops. I couldn't afford them because it was an international teacher salary in Guatemala, not Dubai, not South Korea. What's the other one? Saudi Arabia. Like we know in the international teaching community, like those are high paying places. I was making pennies. I actually took a pay cut to go there, and which was hard. Like I think that affected it. Like I always felt like I didn't have any money. Like I just felt like, because I was paying off student loans back home, and even though I had to pay for rent or things like that, like I just really did not make a lot of money. So I think that affected it. And like I went out with teachers, but then I'd be convicted, and then I'd go out, and then I'd be convicted. And so there kind of became this division between like me and the other teachers, and I just mostly just stayed inside a lot. And I was really just grappling with a lot of sadness and loneliness and brokenness. And I ended up started playing like after school, like a pickup league of basketball with some of the teachers. And then that led to someone recommending me to play in a women's league there. And so I played, so all of the women on this team played like professional women's basketball for like Team Guatemala. But then when they come back to their home country, like, yeah, if it was like the Olympics, whatever, they would all go. But when they were back in Guatemala, they were all from different parts of the country. And so they would go play back in those leagues. And so it was a semi-professional league that we played in, or that I played in. And it was really cool. Like, I think it kind of gave me some new friends and an outlet, but I still mostly was just kind of like, man, this is rough. I do feel like I had never been that sad, and that was hard. Like that was really, really hard. And so I just started to like self-soothe in really unhealthy ways. And so I'd like come home from work and just like sit in the dark for hours. And I just didn't know how to get myself out of it because I'd never been in that situation. And so, unlike Venezuela, I actually stayed out of America for a whole year. Like, I did not go home for Christmas, for Thanksgiving. My roommate and I, Amanda, we just had a blast. But in Guatemala, I was like, I need to go home. And so I booked a flight to go home for Christmas, and I took every minute of that vacation. Like, I'm pretty sure when we got out of school, whatever that last day was for Christmas break, I went straight to the airport. And so fortunately I came back I went back to New York because I just missed my friends. I missed New York a lot. And I went there for like a week. Then I flew to Wichita and was home for Christmas. And I was there for like 2 weeks. And then I flew back to New York for a few more days and like hung out with some more friends. And then I flew back. But when I was in Wichita, my church had a prayer vigil, and different people got up and gave prayer testimonies. And I think at that point, like my not only was my faith building, but like my relationship with Christ was still growing. And so I was still great at listening to worship music. Like that was never like something I struggled with. And then I had gotten a lot more consistent with reading scripture. And so the Bible I had, that African American Jubilee edition, honey, it had topics in the back. So it's like, if you're moving, if you're starting a new job, if you're going into leadership, if you're sadness, I kind of learned how to read the Bible through what I was going through with those topics. And that was really, really helpful. So I still wasn't reading the Bible in terms of like an entire book of the Bible and people's stories. Like every now and again I would, but I mostly just read topically for what was helpful for me at the time. In prayer life, I didn't have like a consistent prayer life where I talked to Jesus all the time. I mostly was just like, oh, this is a crisis, let me ask for help. And so that's kind of how my prayer life looked. But when I went to this prayer vigil, I was hearing stories of people hearing from God, hearing God speak to them. I was hearing stories of people having doors open for them that they had never imagined. And this is not a what is that, prosperity gospel? It was like people who had come from really rocky backgrounds or a horrible marriage, and then how the Lord would just lead them out or open doors, or how people would show up to help them when they didn't have anywhere else to go. Like those were the type of testimonies. And they were saying, but I would cry out to God and ask for help. And so that made me want to try to talk to God more and more consistently. So when I went back to Guatemala, I said, okay, like we're gonna try this. And so I literally was like, I'm gonna pray and I'm gonna read my Bible. And I think someone said something about reading the Bible, and so I was trying to read it more as it's written and not just hopping around. And I did this, y'all. I didn't know at the time it would be this, but I ended up praying for 40 days and reading the Bible every day for 40 days. And before that, so I come back and I just, like I think you can even hear my voice. Like Guatemala was just not a place where I just really enjoyed. I actually think the first week I was there, I met some other teachers and we like went out to dinner, and we like drove around the city because one of them already had a car, and has she already been there for a year? Maybe so. And I just remember being like, I don't like this and I regret my decision. And it's like, who are you gonna tell? And where am I gonna go? Like, what am I gonna do even if I've decided this is not for me? These people have just flown me all the way to this country. I have no other job lined up. I didn't know what to do with that. And I guess I thought, maybe it'll get better. And Guatemala was not horrible. Like I traveled, I went to the beach, I went to the mountains, I've been to Lake Atitlan, I went to Antigua, and I went to Antigua several times. I even went by myself a couple, like that was the first time I ever solo traveled. Like I literally paid for a taxi and it drove me 2 hours or however far it was from Guatemala City. And I spent an entire weekend in Antigua just walking around all by myself. And I was like, so Guatemala, it's beautiful. I think just there were things stirring in me that I couldn't stay. So there was a job opportunity that came up and I applied for it. It's in the book. So if you've read the book, you were caught up. So I just told you everything that preceded like the opening chapter of the book of like, she did what? And yeah, I had a job opportunity and I just didn't think I should stay. I didn't think I'd be good at the job. And they wanted somebody who, someone else applied for the job, didn't get it. I will say she was a little difficult to work with. They wanted her to be my assistant, and I didn't trust her. I remember just being like, she's gonna sabotage me. I don't know why I thought that. Well, actually, I do know why I thought that. And so I was like, that doesn't seem ideal. Like, it's just, I could have just stayed in the classroom instead of moving into like a coaching position. But I also wasn't expecting them to hire me for the position. I was just going to apply so that because I knew it's something I wanted to do later in life. And specifically, I wanted to be a math coach, not a reading coach. So there were a lot of factors in play. And I know like you're getting more details than you get in the book about what surrounded all of that. I think I also had a really big health scare. Like here I am again at the doctor in another country with like no one to translate. So I think there are just a lot of factors at play, and ultimately through my time in prayer, I just felt like the Lord was calling me to move back to the States, which I was like, well, that's not the answer I was expecting to get. And I tried everything in my power, but ultimately, like in the waiting process, I ended up going back to Wichita and waited for God to tell me what was next. Hope that you are just seeing that this journey has not just been like smooth. It has been full of uncertainty and sickness and community building and requiring faith. And it's been a journey of me growing as a Christian. Like I know I meet people now and they're like, you just have so much faith. I'm like, yeah, because this was built. Like this was built through experiences with God, both positive and trying experiences. And so I just pray that thus far, if you're staying this long, then I hope that you are encouraged to stick around and figure out what happened when God called me to move back to Wichita, Kansas.